What is going on, guys? Reflex here, and it was the second episode of The Last of Us entitled Infected. So far, the first two episodes have made me pleased for this show. Now, what I've noticed as a trend for these first two episodes is that they're both beginning with a scientist talking about the virus that will happen or is happening. The first episode, it was talking about the inevitability of if this were to happen, we would all lose. And then the scientist in this one pretty much is saying, yeah, there is no medicine, no vaccine for this. We've already lost. The only way to, pretty much try to stop it is to bomb everyone in that city, which is insane because they showed off the city and you could tell there was a lot of people. So to make that call is crazy. However, obviously that scientist knew what she was talking about, and man, it's crazy to make that call and to understand that she just wanted to go home to her family and spend the final days. Not entirely sure if, they went on with what she requested, which was bombing the city, because I don't think that's the same, obviously not the same place as where Joel and Ellie are, but it seems like bombings also happened in Boston, so it probably happened everywhere. So it's kind of crazy though to make that call, but I do love how they're kind of doing this little expansion on how the outbreak started and also how different places dealt with this outbreak and how all the scientists are reacting. And it seems like if that is the trend, maybe the next episode will have another scientist talking about it, but I'm not entirely sure if they're going to need to keep doing that, to be quite honest. But I do love just the expansion on this, just because we didn't really get a lot of that. We just kind of got thrown in, seeing that there's infected, that there's clickers and all that, and the world's kind of already in ruin. But it's nice to see exactly how it got to that point. Now in this episode, honestly, I would say that Tess was the main focal point of it, and for obvious reasons I'm not going to get into many spoilers, but I would still say if you don't want to hear any spoilers at all, I would just click off the video, go watch the episode, and then come back, which is obviously what people should be doing if you're going to a review of the episode. But yeah, Tess was like the focal point of this episode for sure. And I will say, compared to the game, at least in my opinion, I don't think she seems a little bit more in tune with who she was in the show more than the game. Like, she's even more brash and stubborn and selfish, if that makes sense. Which isn't a bad thing. I actually do like it, and I think she played the part very, very well. It does suck that how the way it ended for her, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But another thing is Bella Ramsey becoming Ellie. This is the second episode, and I do believe that she is becoming Ellie even better throughout the episodes. I mean, this is only the second episode, but like I said, in the first scene with her in the first episode, I wasn't quite feeling her, but then as the time went on, I was like, okay, you're Ellie. And even in this one, it seems kind of like it's just working a lot more, and I'm enjoying the casting now. I definitely am. Like, I don't have any gripes with it. She seems to have that still, like, just snarky, smart-ass attitude, little comebacks here and there, and it had a lot of comedy in this episode, not gonna lie. Like, just like the serious kind of comedy that you would expect and something like this that was in the game, and it works. It actually works pretty well, because there's certain shows like they could try this, like for instance in The Walking Dead, there's sometimes where they try to throw in a joke and it don't really hit the same, it don't feel right. But in this one, it just feels right because the characters just, there's chemistry there. Joel doesn't care for her smart ass remarks. Ellie doesn't care that Joel doesn't care, so she's just gonna continue making them, and it's great. And Tess kind of feeds into it, because I think Tess is a little bit like Ellie, honestly. Like, I think they're one of the same person. It's just, just different situations, but I like it. I think they play off each other pretty nicely. But the big thing about this episode, and the thing I was looking forward to from the trailer, but even in general when the show was announced, was how are they going to do the clickers? Now, on paper, clickers should be one of the easiest things to bring to the screen, because I mean, we've seen zombies, walkers, we've seen every iteration of, these infected, but clickers were different, and just the mannerisms and the way they walk, I was wondering how they were going to do it. And there's obviously talented people that can bring that to life, but man, seeing it in this show was different, because I mean, you could just tell as soon as Ellie spotted that person that was dead and she talked about like who did this, and then you could tell Tess and Joel knew, like they ran into clickers before, and you could tell once they seen the way he got put out there, like, oh no, they're around here somewhere, and they immediately got quiet, and it turned into a quiet place pretty much. And that's something that was just wonderful to see, and it plays so much, just it's played so great in the show, because in the games it feels the same way, because in the games you almost are quiet in your own right, because you're like, okay, these clickers are nothing to, you know, overestimate. You want to make sure you don't make noise, because they're pretty much going to one-hit kill you, because, well, they're clickers, they're not infected. You got to play a lot more smarter with them. And in the show it felt the exact same. You could tell every single step they were taking was thought of, because they did not want to alert them at all. And once they alerted one, oh my gosh, it worked to perfection. I loved it, because I would argue that the clickers are the most important part of this show, just because that's literally like the just bread and butter of the show, is just the clickers, obviously Joel and Ellie, and the story as a whole. But clickers are just, it's something that is a staple to the show that you want it done right, and they were done right. They were as menacing as you expected when a noise happened, because even in the game, if you make a noise and, you know, you aren't stealthy in the right way, shit hits the fan. And well, once they made a noise, shit hit the fan, and it started going crazy. I was like, oh gosh. And in the end, Ellie ended up getting bit again, and that solidified to Tess and Joel. I don't think Joel really wanted to accept it, but at that moment Tess did accept it, that wait, she got bit, I got bit, and yet nothing's happened to her, but it was already eating away at her, to where she was like, yeah, like I'm losing time as we speak. And you could tell the attitude changed very slightly in her, to where she was like, okay, there's hope and there's a redemption arc for me. And she wanted to redeem herself, because prior to that they were saying like, we're shitty people, like we're not good people, and they know that. Joel has accepted that, and it seemed like Tess also accepted that. But at that point, that turning point, she wanted to do something to redeem herself, and she wanted to commit the ultimate sacrifice. Now, I will say, it's not a gripe. It is not a gripe. I think it worked well in the show. However, the scene when they get to the courthouse, everyone knows that scene, because that's when Troy Baker goes full just Troy Baker, where he just gives all of it, when he's like, what are we doing, Tess, and doing all that. And then, you know, he kind of snaps at her and says, it is over, Tess. We didn't get that same thing. Now, I was kind of hoping we were. Me and my friend were talking about it, because we were just like, oh, I can't wait till next episode, because they're probably going to get to that point. Will we hear Pedro Pascal do the Troy Baker line and just say, it is over, Tess, and that just guttural, like, it is done, like we can't keep going on with this. And we didn't necessarily get that. We got more of a calmer Joel, like he's tired, he just wants to go home, he wants to go back to probably listening to the radio, trying to find Tommy and all this and that. And he just says like, it's over, Tess, like it is over. And Tess then reveals that she got bit, and it worked in a different way. Instead of just anger and then Tess turning into like just saying, no, this is a real thing, Joe, like we have to get her here. It was that, just in a different feel to it, which worked in my opinion. But I will say, when all the hordes of infected came running in and she was doing the sacrifice, when they I didn't expect the infected to go in for a kiss, and that's how they were going. Obviously that's where those fibers are, you know, that makes the host pretty much infect the other person. Like that's how the, you know, cordyceps and disinfection works. But I didn't know that. We never seen that. And in the game it was just either a bite, well, it was pretty much just a bite. I think saliva was another thing, things like that. Now you could say it worked the same way with saliva, but I just didn't expect a almost like kind of romantic kissing scene. Nah, it wasn't like that, but it was just a kiss. But it wasn't a kiss, it was obviously infecting another person. I was like, come on, Tess, I didn't expect you to fail at this lighter, like this should be easy for you. But obviously, you know, lighters do that. And also the panicking setting in, knowing that that's her final seconds that she's experiencing. But the thing is about that scene is that Fedra was originally in the game, and they end up going to pretty much go after them, because that's the whole thing, like they're on their tail, just to put an end to it. And instead it was the horde. Now I think in like the making of episode they talked about that, saying that they didn't want to bring Fedra in it as them like chasing them the whole entire time, because that wouldn't necessarily work for a show, which I guess I can understand. But it was definitely, in my mind, I was like, okay, Fedra will be here any second. I didn't realize when they were looking at all of the infected that was playing into what happens later, because when they ended up killing that one infected, his hand touched, and then all of a sudden it alerted all of them because of that little like fiber looking, or like, just, I don't know what to call those things, but it touched that and alerted the entirety of that horde. Now I will say that, you know, after the horde came in, Tess did make the ultimate sacrifice, which she didn't get to do. I think pretty much, she got put down by Fedra pretty fast, because you go away from her and the next thing you know, you hear gunshots and then it's over. And didn't really buy him as much time, but in this, she did the entire thing herself. Like, there was no need for any fighting for Joel and Ellie, which is nice. So Tess did redeem herself, in my opinion, because she convinced Joel to take her west and then sacrifice herself and got rid of that entire horde, which, I mean, now obviously we don't know what's their body count in terms of killing for infected, but in terms of the show itself and what we get to see, she is winning in terms of that, because I'd say there would probably be, shit, I don't even know, to be honest. There was a lot. Man, we'll just cap it at 50. I think there's about 50 probably. You guys can quote me on that if you want, or even go and just correct me. But yeah, she has about 50 in there in the ultimate sacrifice. So next, it looks like, judging from the trailers, we're going to be headed to Bill and Frank. Now, Frank wasn't really a big part in the game necessarily, but it seems like we're going to get a flashback to probably prior to all these things happening, when the whole world kind of shut down. Seemed like Joel was pretty close to Bill. That's why obviously he was radioing him, and they were still talking back and forth from the radio in itself. But seems like we're gonna get a lot more in depth between those characters, which is nice, and it'll be cool to see. But all in all, I'd give this episode, like, I would say a 9 out of 10. I would say 9 out of 10 because I did enjoy the differences between the game and the show. It didn't make too many drastic changes, but the changes that they did make did work, I think. And I'd honestly say that it kind of worked a little bit better, in my opinion, you know. But I'm excited to see Nick Offerman be Bill in this. I would have never guessed they would have casted him when they first announced that they were making the show, but I'm curious to see how he's gonna act, to be honest. Like, it'll be kind of cool. But let me know down in the comment section below how you guys enjoyed this episode. Are you still on the train? Are you enjoying every minute of this Last of Us show? Because it's gonna be sad when it's all over, because honestly, right now, it is one of the greater adaptations from a video game that I've ever seen. And there's not many that they've done, but there's a lot of misses, I can say. Like, even the small sample size that we've gotten, there is a lot of misses, but this brings hope. This brings hope that some adaptations can work. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, and if you guys did enjoy this video, leave a like, subscribe, and you guys know the drill. I will see you guys later.